Buza Commissioner.
Now, let me just take a moment to explain how, because he asked the other reason, how do you calculate? So he asked, why are there many taxes? Then number two, how do you compute the taxes? There are some businesses that are even too small, and some of them may not even keep records, but their turnover is such that they can also contribute some tax. And those are the ones that pay a category of tax called presumptive tax. Now, presumptive tax, again, it has different bands, but the threshold for not paying this presumptive tax is if your turnover means the sales you make as a business. So if your annual turnover is less than 10 million, you pay nil. You don't pay any tax. You don't bother to know about presumptive tax. Now, presumptive tax is a form of income tax, but for the small businesses. And if your turnover is between 10 million, so your turnover here is more than 10 million per annum, but is less than 30 million. Your turnover is less than 30 million. You will only pay a presumptive tax of 80,000. This is per annum. If you don't have records. If you have no records. No records. But supposing you're a small business having the same turnover, but you organized and you have some records. If you have records, you'll pay less than 80,000, and I will demonstrate, because here the formula is clear. It says for all small businesses whose turnover is in this range, between 10 and 30, but record, the formula is 4% of the turnover, it is 0.04% of the turnover less the exemption threshold. So let's assume that your turnover is 20 million per annum. The law says you will contribute a presumptive tax of only 0.4%. And how do you calculate this? You'll get your 20 million, you take off the exemption threshold, this one that pays nil, you take off the 10 million, and then whatever is left, you pay 0.4%. Okay? 0.4 over 100. You know that to make this one a 4, you multiply a 10 here and a 10 here. So this is the same as 4% of 4 over 1,000. And what comes out of here, this is 10 million. The difference between these two numbers, your turnover and the threshold. What comes out of this percent? It is 4 over 1,000. 3 zeros are gone here. What do you stay with? 40,000. Now, 40,000 is much less than 80,000. But you have sorted your obligation. Why? Because you kept records. So the one who has no record, we shall assume, and we will charge a direct fee, a direct tax of 80,000. But the one who keeps records, however small you are, you will pay 40,000 if your sales are around 20 million per annum. So this is the other category of income tax, presumptive tax for small businesses.
Buza Commissioner.
Now, let me just take a moment to explain how, because he asked the other reason, how do you calculate? So he asked, why are there many taxes? Then number two, how do you compute the taxes? If your turnover is between 30 million and 50 million, so your turnover is between 30 million This is your turnover, but it is less than 50 million. The 80 million, which was the base, remember, on this page, the base, for those who don't keep record, was this 80,000, okay? So now, when we come to this next level of threshold, you will start on that base of 80,000, which was paid by those without records. And on this one, for you, we shall get your turnover, assuming your turnover is 40 million. Okay? We minus the base of 30 million. Okay? And on this, we subject this to a percentage of 0.5. Remember, the lower threshold, the percentage was 0.4. Now the percentage here is 0.5. And again, when you do the calculations here, this is 10 million. Times 5%, 5 over 1,000. We have multiplied 10 here and 10 here. So 3 goes with this. So here you stay with 50,000. Okay? And on this 50,000, we add our 80,000. And out of this, we get 130,000. So presumptive tax is a very fair tax. For the whole year, you pay 130, and you have sorted your tax obligations. And then the next band. The highest band of presumptive tax is for those whose turnover is above 80 million, but below 150 million. And these ones, if you have no records, you pay 900,000. If you have records, you will pay 0.7%, following the same example as I've just illustrated. Now, finally, if you are a company, and this company keeps records, and you have expenses, income tax is calculated at 30% of your gross profit. And I've already demonstrated how you come up with the costs of individuals. So for companies, you'll pay 30% of your gross profit. 30% of your gross profit. And I've already mentioned the kind of allowable expenses that you will take. So whatever your business is, the law will allow you to take off all your business expenses, rent, power, salaries, and so on and so forth. And what you remain with as your gross profit, you apply 30%. So this one, you don't have the thresholds of ranges like I've just demonstrated. So, and good enough for most companies, there's some level of organization, so you'll have some records of accounts. Make sure you keep well your record of expenses, because all these allowable expenses, which I've just mentioned, will help you to take off a big chunk of money, and then what stays as your gross profit is what we subject 30% of the gross profit. Okay? And that one, in the interest of time, I will proceed. Now, finally, under income tax, there is what we call rental income tax. Rental income tax is only paid by those who have properties that that earn them rental income. So, if you earn a property that gives you income, but this rental income tax, but this property, you own it as an individual. The formula is very easy. You will pay 12% of your income, but after taking off a threshold. And the threshold value is exactly like the one we give to the other group of salary income earners. So, for example, if you have your building that gives you an income of small property of 500,000. 500,000, because rental income tax, like the other forms of income tax, is paid based on the annual income. 500,000 times 12 months, that will give you 6 million. So if your annual income from rent is 6 million, you'll first take off the other threshold of 2,082,000. Okay? And what stays? You subject 12%. And then you'll get what you have to pay. Just quickly, the calculation there will give me 318,000. Just following the same principles of calculation, which I will not delve into in the interest of time. Now, supposing you own this building now as a company, 600. This one is 600. Maybe that's why it's better to go the long way and calculate. But I've already checked this on a calculator, it comes to that. Now, if you own this property as a company, the formula will change slightly. So for companies, on rental income tax, the companies are allowed to take off all their expenses that contribute to the earning of that rental income. And after they've taken that, what remains is also subjected to 30%. So supposing companies, we assume they have slightly bigger buildings for rent. Let's assume you have a building that earns you like 20 million per month. Out of the year, you'll have earned 24 million. Okay? Now, the law says take off all costs on the 24 million, but these costs must not exceed 50%. So the capping is at 50, meaning the maximum you can take off from here will be 12 million. But also, for an honest taxpayer, you don't have to claim a deduction bigger than what you have actually incurred. So let's use an example of an honest taxpayer who says, for me, my costs on maintaining this building is only 10 million, okay? If you take off 10 million, what remains here is 14 million. And 30% of the 14 million, what does it come to? This one will go. This one will go with 1 0 here, so we shall remain with 1.4 instead of 14, because 1 0 has gone, times 3, okay? And what will this come to? Take 1, okay? This is somebody whose costs were 10 million, his gross income was 24, he will end up paying 4.2. But supposing you want to take maximum benefit of the allowable expense, you are a good taxpayer, but you're not a very honest one. It is also allowed. So you'll do what? You'll take off a maximum of 12 million, and that will give you a difference of 12 million. Again, subject 30% of the 12 million, and you'll end up with 3.6 million. So this is how we calculate rental income tax. Now, very finally, the last form of income tax that we can talk about is what we call withholding tax. Now, withholding tax, as I mentioned earlier, is income tax but paid in advance. So, and we use this, we collect this through withholding tax agents. So you may be making a supply of goods, and I think I answered a similar question last week. You are supplying somewhere, and the company says, out of your income, we have withheld 6%. 6% is normally the rate applicable on the supply of goods and services. So, goods and services, you have supplied a big company like Shell, like Total, like any big hotel. They will tell you, out of your income, we have withheld 6%. That is okay. Don't get disappointed, because this will reduce your income tax at the end of the financial year. So all they need to do, whoever has withheld, is to file a return with us the following month and declare that I withheld 6% from Singuzi and Sons, if we are using a company, or even as an individual. I withheld this from Singus John. And when I'm filing my income tax, my personal income tax return, I will say, whereas I should have paid URA, say an example of 2 million, Shell withheld my 400,000 on this supply. Total withheld my 200,000 on this supply. Serena Hotel withheld my 500,000 on this supply. Therefore, my total withholding tax credits are 1.1 million. And what I will pay to URA is 2 million minus my 1.1 million already withheld, and here is your 900,000. I have sorted out my obligation. So, Joseph, I've taken time and used the opportunity of your question to inform you that the many taxes that sometimes you feel as a heavy burden on your business are not all your taxes to pay. If you remember, our discussion started on page 1, and on this page, we're looking at this page, we're looking at the major cost to your company will be income tax, which is here, okay? And I've explained the different forms of income tax. Now, next time, we'll look at the indirect taxes, which are otherwise known as consumption taxes, and these may be paid by your company, but they will not be borne directly by your company. Your company will only help to collect from the consumers and to account and pay this to Uganda Revenue Authority. I thank you very much for this question. It's been a long one. We will discuss the next forms in our next meeting. Thank you.
Buza Commissioner. Now you can get direct answers. Send your tax-related questions via WhatsApp or SMS to 0790-141-887, and the Commissioner General of URA, John Musinguzi, will personally address them. Tune in to UBC News Tonight every Monday and Wednesday for expert insights and clear explanations. Buza Commissioner.